Hello and welcome to the Spinal Cord Injury Forum. I'm Stephen Burns, Medical Co-Director of the Northwest Regional Spinal Cord Injury System and a physician in the Department of Rehabilitation Medicine here at the University of Washington. The forums, the video recordings, and our online media content are made possible by a grant from the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research. Tonight we are pleased to have two speakers who will be talking about community mobility, getting where you want to go. First, Jodi Connolly of Harborview's Getting There Transportation Resource Center, and then Amanda Bryant of First Transit.
Again, my name is Jodi Connolly, and I am a recreational therapist. I've been one for about 20 years now, and the last 11 I've been at Harborview and working on and off through rehab, inpatient and outpatient, which has included working with quite a few folks with spinal cord injury and having the privilege of being able to go out in the community with many. So it's been really exciting, and I'm very excited to be here. Currently my role at Harborview is more on the transportation focus with community reintegration, and I coordinate the Getting There Transportation Resource Center. And it's a new thing, but some of you may also know of it as a place where you come to do the evaluations if you have applied for the Access Vans service here in King County. We're all part of the Transportation Resource Center there now. And my primary role is to assist consumers, King County residents who are needing to connect with transportation that's appropriate for them in the community. So not only people with spinal cord injuries, but brain injury or arthritis or any need that they have to get connected with transportation. So Amanda and I are really excited to be here, and I'll let her tell more about herself when she comes up. What I want to do first is kind of state the obvious and spend a little time talking about the special considerations of having a spinal cord injury and what that means whenever going out on an outing. I'll probably use the word outing quite a bit. That just means getting out in the community, not in the house, going somewhere and coming back home. So, and then also I'll review the different transportation options that are here in King County, and I'll touch on is everyone in here living in King County currently? Anyone not living in King County currently? Okay, so I'll probably just mention everything based on King County since we have King County residents, but and then we'll have, Tom is going to work with me a little bit just to give an example of taking a trip on a metro bus. He's had a lot of experience being in the community and using public transportation, and we thought it would just be great to have a very concrete example of what he does when he goes on a trip. And then Amanda will talk about transit instruction, a great program that we have here in King County. Really lucky to have that. So. Having a spinal cord injury and special considerations, and even within the scope of spinal cord injuries, as you all know far better than I, that there's a huge spectrum of what someone's abilities, functional abilities are, and how that impacts your ability to be getting around. And so, take from this what is important to you. But I just wanted to go through quickly like some of the things to be sure to think about whenever you're heading out. So medications, making sure yourself or a caregiver or a friend can manage them, and having enough with you in case you don't get home until later than expected, or that you may have more pain than anticipated or have some other need that you don't anticipate. If you have medication that you would need to support that, then it would be best to take it along and have it accessible. Also, for those who have trouble with dysreflexia, autonomic dysreflexia, having nitropaste, if that's what your doctor, having whatever your plan is that you've gone over with your doctor about how to manage your blood pressure in the community is key. Even if it happens rarely, it's those rare moments that it's the most important, and to have the information handy and where someone can access it. If somebody's with you, that they know it. If they don't, then how do you communicate that information to someone who might come upon you and want to help, and they might not know what to do. So I think medications anything related to autonomic dysreflexia and educating is great. Hydration, how to easily access it, having water. I see Tom's got his bottle right there on his chair in front of him there. And I've seen a lot of people with camelbacks or having a long straw, whatever it is you need, or easy open lid, or just taking along whatever you need for hydration. And of course or if you're using a manual chair, maybe a bottle cage on your chair. I don't know what works for somebody, but and then any bowel and bladder issues, of course, would be important to know how to deal with those and how to have a backup plan. Like, is there a certain time of day that it's going to be best to travel? Like, maybe they're working on a program in the morning, and so why even bother to try and make an appointment or make a bus in the morning when it'd be better to just wait until later in the day, and just to plan for success as far as that goes. And also knowing how to manage and have equipment around for managing catheterization or leg bags, and knowing where facilities are, or feeling okay with telling someone, I need some privacy, can you pull a curtain, or find a storm drain, or whatever you need to do to manage things in a way that's going to keep you from having a medical emergency while you're out in the community. Okay, so then identification and medical information. Not everyone may need this. People have spinal cord injuries and are healthy and getting around out in the community without needing to carry something, but at the same time, if there is, especially with dysreflexia, an issue that you may need to have an emergency contact called, or a doctor called, or your medical information shared with emergency responders, then you may want to consider having something like that available. And I'm holding up my wrist. I have a medic ID for myself. No big medical issues, but it's just nice to have something on and not have to worry about it. And then some of them, I've got examples of one over here, has a phone number linked to it. So if you pay a little extra per year, then emergency responders call the phone number, and all your medical files are there and they have access to them. So that's another way to manage it without having to think about it every time. Skin integrity issues, clothing choices, cushions, making sure it's in good shape, knowing what you can tolerate and allowing extra time. And you all know your skin far better than I do, and all of its nuances, and where to be careful and where it's not a big deal. But there are a lot of times on the bus or on access or getting to and from somewhere where there would be opportunities to be sitting for a very long period of time. So knowing what you need in terms of changing position and how to manage your skin, and leaving, not wearing a new pair of jeans on the first day when you're going on a bus or something like that could end up with a poor outcome. So and then that really leads right into tilts, and doing tilts or pressure reliefs, releases, whichever you want to call it. For those of you who have the lack of sensation and are needing to do a pressure relief on your skin, often there's not an opportunity to do it on the bus for safety and transportation and transport, and also there's not always a lot of space. So not only on the regular bus, but on access as well. So that's something to think about. If your chair is one that that does a tilt in space, then you want to plan to do that before or after getting on a vehicle, most likely, rather than on it. And we'll talk a little more about that soon. The chair itself, you always want to be able to have a plan for if you get a flat, or if you check your chair before you go, and know, and all of your equipment, whatever. If you're not using a chair, then checking equipment to make sure. And also managing, I keep saying, well, bring this and make it accessible and have it handy and know how to use it and all that. So what to put things in often is going to be a bigger deal, and having a bag or something to carry items in that are important to you to have, that are also not out in the way of the aisles and other passengers and things like that, making boarding and disembarking easier. And when to go alone or when to go with someone, everyone makes different choices about their transportation. It's a very personal thing. So some folks go places strictly independently and never go with someone, and that works for them, and that's the easiest thing for them. Others want to have a caregiver with them at all times, and that's what works best. So, everybody, it's a personal decision, and sometimes it's just nice to have a friend along. Some people I've spoken with have said, well, I can never use the bus because I can't do such and such, but or I can't because I can't do it alone. But at the same time, maybe if you're using a manual chair and you think I can't get there, maybe go with a friend, and the two of you together can take the bus and not have to worry about parking wherever you're going. And sometimes even using a bus is more convenient than riding with a friend. So knowing how to direct your care, and knowing when to go alone and knowing when to go with someone. I just went through, or just ran right through some of the things to think about as like an outing checklist, and we've developed a few tools that really are just meant to get you started. It's the outing checklist, and it goes over pretty much everything I just covered. And then there's another one that's specific to if you're using a power chair, things to check off and make sure are functioning before you head out. And these are available up here and also on the website. So, and they're meant to be just kind of starter ideas. So if it's a barrier, thinking about absolutely everything that you have to pack before you get out and into the community, maybe this could be a tool to at least get you started, and then you could develop your own from there. Special assistance cards, if folks are having issues with their voice carrying, or even speaking for any other reason besides just your voice carrying. I'm sorry, I keep walking around and I know the camera's needing to be in one place. But and Amanda might talk a little more about this, I'm not sure, but this is a card that the drivers on Metro are trained to to know that this is someone who has a communication issue, and so you could write down where you're going, where you need to get off, and then it has instructions for the operator on the back about someone with a communication disability. And you don't have to use this if you have a communication disability. It could just be that you have a quiet voice and have an issue with projection, and you just need to tell the driver, this is where I need to get off, and I'll need the lift when I get off there. So it would be a way of setting up for success with the driver right away. And we can talk more about that too later, but there's these tools. Sometimes people will make their own too, but ideally the drivers are trained to know that that's what those are for. So we've got both Access and HopeLink planning forms. I haven't talked much yet about Access or HopeLink, but these are two other little forms that are just before you sit down to make your phone call, or maybe you could do it for trip planning on the Metro bus. Things to think through that you want to ask, and information that you need to take down before you hang up the phone to, or you could program it into a tape recorder or whatever typically works for you. There's information there, or tools there. High visibility items. A lot of folks, transportation doesn't have to be on a vehicle. It can be just being a pedestrian and using your chair, or walking from place to place, or even, just by being a pedestrian going from home to the bus stop, making yourself visible, predictable movements, being seen by car drivers, bus drivers, vehicle drivers of any type. I think we all would agree is a huge priority. And so putting reflective tape is great, bright colors are great, lights are great. We've got examples of each of those over here. We didn't bring our big items, but think about getting even the construction reflective vests and things like that are some tools that might keep you more visible. And I say might. Nothing's going to guarantee your safety, or that a driver's going to make the right choice. So we always just want to encourage people to always make the safe choice and move predictably, and do your best to be seen, because there's never a guarantee. So let's go to transportation options in King County. There's obviously the bus. Both Metro, Sound Transit, and Community Transit all have buses here in King County. If you hear someone say fixed route, that is another word for bus. So that means that the bus is on a route that's fixed and they can't stray from that bus route. So that's a bus that you need to go to and wait at a stop for. And then there's Access, which is King County's ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act paratransit system, and I'll talk a little more about that. There are wheelchair accessible taxis available now in King County, and the numbers of them are growing. I'll talk more about that too. In South Lake Union, if you live or frequent that area, there's a new South Lake Union streetcar. That's accessible as well. Link Light Rail is accessible and has really nice features that you can just roll right on, and there's no tie downs. There's just an area that is open and has no seats that's semi-enclosed, but it's very quick boarding and off you go. Senior Shuttles is a neighborhood shuttle system run by Senior Services of King County for people 55 and over, or who are an adult with a disability. And there's no qualifications, there's no application. You sign up on the phone, and if you're under 65 and you have a disability, you just tell them or under 55, and then I'm an adult and I have a disability and I need a ride. And they provide neighborhood-specific transportation Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. And it's much more limited than, say, Access or the bus, but it works really well for a lot of folks to run errands, get to the store, get to doctor's appointments, things like that. And I have more information about them here and also on the website. Senior volunteer transportation and group health, both for those who are ambulatory and can get in and out of a car independently. I shouldn't say ambulatory, those who can get in and out of a car independently, and these are all run by volunteers. So the volunteers drive their own cars, and it's to and from medical appointments only for people 60 and over. And so if you can get in and out of a car independently, then a volunteer driver might be able to help you get to a medical appointment. And the drivers are not supposed to manage a wheelchair, getting it in and out of the vehicle so that the volunteer doesn't get injured, but they might be able to pull up at a medical center or something like that and go in and get a waiting room wheelchair or something like that. So that's another option. HopeLink is DSHS, Medicaid, Medicaid, which is the medical ID, medical coupon, Provider One card. That's all terms for Medicaid. HopeLink is the transportation broker for them, and if you have an appointment that's being paid for by DSHS, then you may qualify for a ride to and from that, and we've got information about that here. Doesn't mean it's going to be a cab or an access type van. It could be something else, like they might give you a bus pass or they might give you a gas voucher. Depends on what the best, cheapest form of transportation is for you. Okay, so I'll spend a little more time on Metro Access, which is King County's ADA paratransit system. So paratransit, this is parallel to the bus. That means it runs the same hours, the same areas and as the regular fixed route Metro buses. I think it's really important to know what is Access and what it's not, so that you know what kind of a tool it could be for you and how to use it or not to use it. So when you think of a disabling condition that prevents use of a regular Metro bus, it could be a physical condition like a spinal cord injury, it could be a cognitive or thinking problem, someone with a developmental disability, or any difficulty finding their way around or having memory problems might qualify for Access if it prevents them from using the Metro bus. So Access is for the trips that are impossible to be done on the metro buses. As Dr. Steens mentioned, there are all the buses around here now have lifts and or ramps. They're either lifted buses or ramped buses. All the transit systems, metro, sound transit, and community transit. So access is meant to be there for those times when a bus trip is still impossible. Be it that you cannot get to and from the bus stop, it's not accessible, there's construction, there's a curb ramp missing, there's the sidewalk conditions are terrible. For whatever reason, if you can't get to and from a bus stop, that might be a time when access would give you a ride. Similarly, if you don't know how to get to the bus stop, not that you haven't learned it yet, but if it's impossible for you to remember how to get to the bus, or you are not making safe choices for street crossing, things like that. I won't go into more detail, but I think you get the idea. It's not for when it's frustrating or boring or lots of transfers or it's uncomfortable to use the bus. It's for when it's impossible to use the bus. That's when access is to be there. So that's the theory behind it and the law behind it. You must be eligible to ride it. So there's an eligibility process, which some of you may have done or gone through and may likely go through again. First is a pre-application, and then Metro Accessible Services sends you an application, and then you would come to an evaluation at Harborview, and then there's a determination by access. And if there's agreement, that's great. And then if there's not, then there's an opportunity to appeal. And then at least every 3 years, people come up again for renewal or for revisiting and reapplying is what it means essentially. Or sometimes more frequently, especially if your chair and your weight might be close to the limit. And I might hum a couple bars about that because I missed it on the previous slide. But when it comes to chairs and dimensions and transit, public transit, the metro buses and access have weight and length and width limitations. So 30 inches wide, 52 inches long, and under 600 pounds. And that might sound like a lot, but it's not when it comes to a power chair and the batteries and equipment and seating and tilt systems and things like that that might be on a chair. So if someone's considering getting a new mobility device, it might just be, if you're planning to use public transportation, it might be really good to have a detailed conversation with therapist, doctor, physiatrist, whoever is prescribing and helping you get this, to kind of get an idea of what the total weight is and dimensions and how you plan to use it. And wheelchair accessible taxis we'll go over in a little bit, but they also have a height limitation of 56 inches because they use minivans and they have a smaller clearance. So that's usually not a huge issue, but for some really tall folks or people who have a flag on the back or something like that, it might be a good key to where to set that flag. So access is $1.25 each way, so it's $2.50 round trip. It's a shared ride, which means that you may be on the van with someone, with 2-3 people who are going to be picked up or dropped off before you, so your trips can be fairly long at times. They do their best to minimize them, but it's a very busy system. And then also it means that a PCA means personal care attendant, and if you're approved to have one with you because of needs for activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, eating, managing care, things like that, then personal care attendants, if they're approved, can go for free. If not, you can have a guest go with you, and then they just pay the $1.25 as well. It's not just for medical appointments. A lot of people think, oh, access is just for medical stuff. It's not. It's public transportation. Bus driver doesn't ask me where I'm going, why I'm going there. Am I going to the casino? Am I going to the park? When I get on the bus, doesn't matter. Access can't ask that either. You need to go to the park. You need to go to the park. You know, they're more about planning your trip from point A to point B than they are about what you're going to do on the other end. Bus rapid transit, really quickly. This is going to be coming up more often. Well, hopefully, if funding is found for it all. But currently, in Federal Way, from Federal Way to SeaTac, is a bus rapid transit line, and also in Snohomish County, Community Transit has the Swift line. If you think about a spectrum of trains and rail to buses, so trains having their own separated rail, their own schedules, their own loading platforms, their own, they have complete right-of-way and very fast, to buses being in traffic, using infrastructure that is already there, things like that, and going slower. It's the effort to move buses closer to how a train works. So they have signal controls over like the traffic signals to help move through more quickly. They've got separated lanes to go more quickly. They have a lot of the stations or stops have curb bulbs where they bring the passengers out basically into the street to load, not really into the street. I mean, you're elevated, you're on a sidewalk. It's just that the sidewalk bumps out further so that the bus doesn't have to pull out of traffic, pull into traffic. The bus has its right-of-way, and cars are going to have to go around it. So it's much more quick. Loading for someone using a chair is going to be the same at this point as on a regular Metro bus, but you can pay before you get on or at the front. And in the meantime, other people are loading in the back. They're not waiting, and you're doing all this, you know, shuffling around. There's probably still some shuffling around. You would know more than I would as far as that goes, but ideally everything is set up to move more quickly. There's no schedule. You don't have to do the trip planning ahead of time to know what time. You show up, and it's at least every 10 minutes. And at the stations, not every stop, but at the stations, there's a countdown that tells you how many minutes away it is. So it's moving a lot more quickly. So that's pretty cool. And they connect right now to light rail to downtown, downtown to more buses. So you can see that the network is kind of growing there. DART, it's sort of a mix between Access and the Metro bus. It's in smaller areas outside of central Seattle, designed to help bring people to the bus stops. And so there are a few routes, probably 10 in the area in King County, where this bus is on a regular route, but if you call a couple hours ahead and you are needing to go somewhere within the zone that is shaded in, or you're needing to be picked up from that zone that is shaded in, then they can leave the route and do that. It's not door to door though. You're either going to the bus route or from the bus route, but not.
Does that require a pre-certification?
It does not. This is the regular Metro bus, no pre-certification. So I could, if I lived in this area, I could call and say I need a ride to the stop at 8:30. If they're running them, then you know they might be able to fit it in. It's first come, first serve though, and they have a limited number per trip, per route. Wheelchair accessible taxis started as a pilot program that Metro and King County started. It's now growing, and long story short, there are the top 10%, there are wheelchair accessible taxis available in King County. A few different agencies have them. They're listed below in order of how many they have. So Yellow Cab has the most, then Far West, then Green Cab, and then Stita is just to and from the airport. But the drivers are of the top 10% of the taxi drivers in King County that applied, that were allowed to apply. And then there was a lottery to get, after 5 years, they were then given their, what does it say there? Their license for city and county, which is like $200,000 I learned recently. So this is a huge motivation for these drivers to be getting this. So anyway, they are independent. Oh, so they are independent contractors. The Yellow Cab and the cab companies are also their own businesses. So what that boils down to sometimes for the consumer is, you know, you make a call and you get a taxi and hopefully it arrives pretty quickly. Their goal is to have the response time come down to 20 minutes. That's going to probably be a while before it gets that way, but because you know currently just the numbers of cabs are low and the response of the cabs they vary. But it's another option. A reason to use a wheelchair accessible taxi might be if you have to go somewhere the same day. You can't get there by the bus and you can't schedule access because it's 1 to 3 days ahead of time. Or if you're out somewhere, you miss a ride and you got to get home. Programs to reduce costs. I'll jump right to the Taxiscrip. Taxiscrip is a half-price taxi program here in King County, and you need 2 things to be eligible for the program. One is to have a regional reduced fare permit. That's the first line, our RFP, regional reduced fare permit. Taxiscrip is a metro program, so they need to know that everyone who's using the Taxiscrip are already holders of a regional reduced fare bus pass or permit. I don't want to call it bus pass because you can use it on the ferries and on light rail and all that. The other thing you need besides the regional reduced fare pass is to be below a certain income level. So the idea is for seniors or adults with disabilities who are lower income, and I say lower because it's not low income like Medicaid low, but it has a higher ceiling. So if you think you're not eligible, it still might be worth looking. And then they limit the amount per month you can get. You can pre-purchase up to $35 a month from your own pocket, send it to Metro. Metro sends back twice that in taxi fare and taxi ticket books. And then you just, when you call for the cab, you say, I'm using Taxiscrip. Go ahead.
If you ask to be tied down, is the driver required to strap you down in a bus?
Yes, yes. And there are 4 points of restraint. A lot of people think there are only 3 because it's rare that the driver will use 4. It's okay for them to use 3 or 4 in terms of what the drivers are trained and the regulations say. But if you want 4, you can ask for all 4. And it's very specific to each chair. If you know where, your tie-down areas are, it's great to know where they are and indicate them to the driver. If the driver feels like that those are the best places too, then they'll use them. If they think otherwise because of how their equipment works, then it's best to let the driver decide. The main thing is you always need it to be secured to a part of your frame, some portion of your chair that's not detachable. Never let them put it on an armrest or a front caster or a wheel. It's always on a member of the frame. Is that more than what you needed for that answer?
Yes, we had a client with Pushing Boundaries that got hurt, and he said he asked for restraints, and the driver said he didn't need them.
They're required to provide them if somebody asks for them. And there are also a shoulder and lap restraint. The drivers are required to restrain the chair, the mobility device, not you. So if you want to be restrained, you need to ask for it. And I learned something new recently. I've been on the bus many times with folks using a chair. I've never seen a driver use, even when that's asked for, anything but the shoulder restraint. But in order for it to really work and keep you in the chair, it needs to be integrated with the lap restraint as well. So 4 points of restraint are definitely, it's within your right to demand that, as long as it can be physically done. Yeah. And the other is to ask for that shoulder and lap restraint too. Tom is a frequent transportation, public transit patron, user, whatever you want, passenger. And I just asked him to hum a few bars about kind of each step that we've gone through so far, the preparation, planning, first time he did a bus ride, an example of a trip he does and what it's like getting on and off the bus, and just some tips that might be good take-home messages that he wants to pass along. So I'll let you start talking and then I'll...
What's my time frame? It's a lot to
8
cover.
minutes.
Okay. I've got my passes right here. I've got both my Access and my PCA card Orca, which is loaded with money. I swipe right off there. I'm a quad, so I just use my little loop and it works for me. I've got my water. I've got my cell phone I use for emergencies. And I usually use one of those plastic shopping tote bags with the little ring handles on it right here, which I'll keep food, wallet, change purse, stuff like that. If I'm going to go out for a long extended day, I can pull it up on the chair, do what I've got to do with it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give the reasonable weather people in town a couple of days to really get their act together before my event and figure out what I'm going to wear. Dress appropriate, make sure I've got everything I need. I'll get online and I'll do a trip planner. As far as the pets, Sound Transit is real picky about pets. They won't let you on the bus unless you pretty much got proof that your pet is required. Metro drivers really don't care. There's things about the system that you really got to be aware of. Anyway, back to where I started, the trip planning. Most of the time it works really well and it'll get you pretty close to where you want to go. The issue with the trip planner is if you put in an address that's half a mile, whatever, away from where you want to go, it'll just shut you down, pretty much say, sorry, we can't help you. If it's after hours, it'll say the same thing. So sometimes you've got to get a little bit savvy and know a little bit about your buses and go to the actual bus and see, okay, how close is the last stop from where I'm trying to go? Can I try to coordinate a different way to get there by using 2 different transit companies? So you kind of got to play with it, but as time goes on, you get to learn stuff. You're always going to run into situations where there's, issues. There's construction, there's temporary setbacks, something's closed, the bus stop is closed, so you've got to allow extra time. Getting frustrated, getting everybody pissed off isn't going to work. You got to allow extra time. You got to allow a plan B. I never leave the house without a plan B. I know what my backup is going to be. If I'm going to go all day and I've got 7 buses to catch, I've got option A, option B. Here's where I'm going to be, here, there, when, what happens if. Chair breaks down, I got water, whatever else.
Hi everybody, my name is Amanda Bryant and I'm with the Metro Transit Instruction Program. So what we do is it's a free program, it's funded by King County, and we provide one-on-one individualized bus training for seniors and anyone with a disability, seniors over 65. So we have a couple of different types of training. First of all, I'll talk about the individualized training. It's route specific, it's one-on-one to and from a specific origin to a specific destination. It has to be somewhere that you're going to frequently. And frequently isn't really that frequent. We say at least one one-way trip a week. So once you know where you'd like to learn how to use the bus to, you give us a call, and it just takes a couple of minutes. And I'm just going to ask a few basic questions. If you're your own legal guardian, where you're trying to get to, when you need to be there, how often you go there, and then a little bit about your experience in the community. So have you ever used a fixed route before, which is the regular city bus? Have you ever done it independently? And what are your challenges, or what do you perceive are your challenges to using fixed route? So if you use a mobility aid, or if you use a walker or a cane, it's good to know that up front so that we can plan the best route for you. So the next step after I get this initial information is I find an instructor. We have 6 instructors, full-time instructors. They plan their own schedule, so I look for one who has some availability coming up. Usually it takes about a week to 2 weeks, depending on the type of trip that you're requesting. We always prioritize medical, school, and work trips. So if it's something recreational to the library, it might be put back a little bit because we want to serve people who need to get to work and to school and medical appointments first. So once I find an instructor, they are going to do some route planning. So they're going to take the trip information that you provided, and they're actually going to go out into the field. So they are going to check to make sure that you're not going to get stuck on a sidewalk. They're going to check for things like, are there curb cuts? Is the ground uneven? What kind of traffic is there? Is it really busy part of town? What kind of street crossings are there? What kind of lighting is it? They're going to take into consideration the time of day that you're traveling, how many times you have to transfer, all these things, and they're going to gather this information, and then they're going to meet with you. It's called the assessment meeting. It usually only takes half an hour to 45 minutes, and it's a nice opportunity to talk to the instructor, and they're going to talk about what they found on their route planning. You can decide together what of those options works best for you, or what you want to try first. It's not written in stone. We're very flexible if something doesn't work, or if you didn't like that way. If there's another option, we can always consider trying it that way the next time. So the instructor is going to ask you a few basic bus riding skills questions. They're going to ask you, have you ever had any problems, transportation? Have people bothered you on the bus? What did you do? Just basic bus riding skills questions, just to get a sense of if any support tools need to be created. Sometimes the instructors will create an appropriate support tool, or use some of the support tools like Jodi pointed out, the route cards that are the pink route cards that have your trip information on it. Sometimes they might make something unique to you, like if you need large print, they might create one on the computer that works for you. So that's the goal of the instructor, and that's the purpose of the assessment meeting. And then you actually travel together. So the instructor, we like to travel at the time that you're actually going to use the bus. So if you're learning how to get to work, they are going to meet you at a time early enough that you're going to get to work at your start time, whenever you told us you wanted to be there. So we'll meet you where your origin is, so probably at home, and travel all the way there with you, and then meet you when you're done and travel back. So whether it's 4 hours, 8 hours, 15 minutes, whatever the plan is, we always try to work around the rider's schedule. So once, we don't set a limit, a set amount of time. We don't say you have to learn this in a certain amount of time. We go at the individual's pace. We don't just train in a certain area. We go anywhere within King County, and we'll actually train outside of King County as long as one part of the trip begins or ends in King County. With each day of instruction, the instructor is going to hand off more and more responsibility to the rider, so that they're doing it more and more on their own, and the instructor will actually physically distance themselves. So they're going to sit a couple seats back. Of course, they're going to be available if you have a question or you need help, but the goal is so that you're doing this on your own. With each day of training, safety is the number one thing. So we're going to talk about, even if you have been traveling everywhere on your own, we're going to still talk about safe street crossing. We always go over it with everyone. That's such a big thing. In fact, we always say street crossing is probably the most dangerous thing you're going to do when you're traveling through the community using the city bus. So we really emphasize that, we really need you to stop, look both ways, and then cross. Even if you've done this a million times through your life, I'm even reminding myself that all the time. Sometimes if I'm hurry or, got to get somewhere. So that's part of our training. And we also work on what to do if you're lost, what to do if you get on the wrong bus, how to deal with strangers in the community, people that might be bothering you, persistent, anything like that. Even sometimes we'll talk about things you might have had grumpy drivers in the past or situations like that. So the trainer has done this so many times. They've seen so many situations. They spend every day on the bus. So they have a lot of good solutions and a lot of good responses and advice about how to deal with different situations on the bus. So even sometimes we have people who already know the route, but they have concerns about, like they have anxiety, or they're just not sure about where to get off or where to get on. And having the instructor go out beforehand and even just picking landmarks for them or working with them to pick out landmarks takes a lot of that sort of nervousness and that uncertainty about using the bus. So that's our one-on-one training. I'll speed it up a little bit. Sorry, I gotta breathe. So our system training is the same. Everything is included in as the individual. We're still going to talk about safety. We're still going to do the route planning, the route checks. But with the system training, the goal of the system training is to show a person how to plan for themselves their own trips. So we'll work with you on your own computer, whatever computer you're comfortable with, to go on Trip Planner. We'll show you all the tips and tricks and basically Trip Planner language so that you know how to plan an accessible trip. So how to plan for your trip and how to be prepared with schedule changes, rider alerts, things like that. How to find out that even though even practice doing calling customer service and being prepared. You'll actually practice that a couple of times if you want to, calling customer service and just planning a mock trip. And you don't have to be going quite as often as the individual training. I think it's 12 round trips a year. That's all you have to be going to a single destination, but when you're practicing with the instructor, you'll probably go to a few different destinations just to get the hang of using different routes and planning to different areas that may or may not be familiar to you. So that's a more generalized. The thing about the difference between, a big difference between the transit instruction individualized training and the system training is that once the individualized training is complete, you can always, if you move, if you have a new destination, you can always call the instructor or you can call me and set up another training. The expectation with a system training is that if we've done our job really well, you won't need us anymore. So, I mean, of course, you can always call us and ask us for advice or questions, but really a system training is intended to be a one-time training on the Metro system. We offer group transit instruction. Group instruction is very popular. Sometimes she's busy months in advance, so it's always good to, if you're considering this, to give us a call. She will divide, a group can be as little as 5 people or more. She might have to divide the group up. What happens is the group, you call me and I'll have the group trainer work with you on when and where you want to travel to. She'll come to your location, to your facility, do a PowerPoint presentation on how to ride a Metro bus. So it's a really positive way to kind of, if you've never used the bus before, or if there's some people that haven't and they're just not sure, it's very fun. You go with your peers. You're usually traveling to a destination that she goes to, like the museum and the zoo and Seattle Center, and kind of wish I had her job. She's always on a field trip somewhere really fun. So, but it's a really positive way just to get comfortable and get used to trying the city bus, with your peers. So that's the group instruction. And then we also have lift and ramp training, which is probably invaluable. I mean, it is invaluable if you use a mobility aid. What we do is we park a Metro City bus twice a month, and we provide transportation to pick you up, take you to the appointment, and then take you back afterwards. And you get to practice boarding and getting off of a Metro bus without that bus going anywhere. So you have a Metro bus driver and an instructor just one-on-one with you, giving you tips about how to get on, how to get off, what to do in situations, when to pay, what the driver's responsibility is, what's expected of you or your care attendant or companion. So the lift and ramp training, like I said, it's free. All of our services are free. It's a really good opportunity if you want to use the Metro bus and you're not sure and you don't want your first time to be like a live trip with bus packed full of people and feet and bags and everything like that. So that's available. If you have any more questions about that, you can always give me a call too, and we can talk about that more in detail. But that's a good one. And then community outreach. I go to transition programs, vocational places, agencies, high school transition programs, and talk about these different services and other services that I'll get to, trying to cover everything. Okay, so that's transit instruction in a nutshell.
One of my questions is, between the two coasts, there's a big frontier out there. Washington, D.C., maybe New York, there's a very developed, certainly not ideal, system to meet, the ADA requirements. And we're really reaching out to the consumer here. But, people watching the video from places that have the system less developed, what advice would you have as a recreation therapist and as a trainer for those individuals out there in the frontier? How can they be self-advocates like, Jack Martin was? We talked about at the beginning of this presentation, kind of getting things started for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think you all heard the question because of the microphone, but a good place to start would be with if someone sees a regular bus, then call that same bus system, find out what the system is, and call them and say, well, I need accessible services, either on that bus or a paratransit system. So what is your version of that? The ADA does require that there be a parallel system for people who are not capable of using that public transportation system, be it good, bad, or mediocre, and that's the actual language. So if your transit system is good, bad, or mediocre in your area, just start with that. And if it's even a smaller area, start with your municipality, your county. It's the counties that often will manage the transportation, so calling a county administrative office to find out what accessible transportation is available in the county. Others, it's through the city's transportation, whatever the municipality is that you're in, then give them a call.
I'd like to thank both speakers as well as the audience. Some excellent comments tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.